Hey everyone, so today we're talking about putting on the rear end back together. Got this lifted up here. I got a new gasket to put on it in terms of this outer gasket here. I ordered that true John Deere part. Well, you can get it at other locations from John Deere, but I got it as a true gasket part rather than making my own because it's so big. But anyway, first things first, let's talk about this guy. Alright, so I didn't show this in tearing the rear end apart, but here is your rock arm piston. Here is the housing. I finally got this out. For some reason it just didn't want to come out, so I basically rigged up a puller for it, and I used the skid loader to draw it out using a chain and the forks on the skid loader. Anyway, so considering it was kind of stuck like that, I thought it would be in worse condition, but everything actually looks very good. If we can see down in the bore, not that you can really tell in the video, everything looks good, feels pretty good. I may just run some emery cloth on it real quick, but so on the later G's, if I roll this over here, so this is F316R. It uses the leather cup, kind of like my B did. I think I talked about it in my B video. I happened for my B to find a new old stock one, a true leather cup. The later styles had a little bit different piston setup here, and it replaced the leather cup with something else. And I'm wondering, I need to look up the part number to see if this is the updated style or not, because this doesn't appear to be leather. It appears like a hard rubber or something. So again, I'm wondering if somebody had this apart before, or maybe I just don't know what I'm looking at. But there's the part number, F311R or 77, not sure. Have to look that up, see which it is, but everything looks in pretty good order here. So I think I'm just gonna put it back in now that it's free. Get some oil in there, and hopefully she'll work just fine. So I'm probably going to get that started in the piston, or sorry, in the cylinder before I put it on the rear end housing, because getting it lined up and in and started if I remember right on my B was kind of a pain. And of course you don't want to screw this up. So while I got it nice and vertical and can kind of line it up and just push it down in, I'm probably going to do it here. Then I'll go ahead and bolt it up to the rear end. I'll get a gasket made for this first, and then we can get the rear end on. Alright, so you can see we got this back on here. We got the 5 bolts in. I got the new gasket there and wire tied up. Now we'll go ahead and put this on the tractor. Okay, so we got this back on. Of course, what makes it nice is these 2 long studs make it so you can just slide it on and get your bolts in. You don't have to worry about holding it and getting any started. I did make one goof. So if you remember, I had this on in order so I could easily pull the piston out. Well, when I put that on, I didn't stick this up in there, so I'm going to have to take that cotter key out, take that pin out, stick this up in there, reintroduce the pin, and put a new cotter key in. That's the easiest solution, of course, rather than undoing everything I just did. So that's no big deal. So I'll just go ahead and get that fixed, and then we will start moving on to down here. Okay, I lied. We're actually going to work up here first and get these arms in, and I'll tell you why. So I got this piece in there correctly. You take the bolts out of here. Now I put the piston in all the way, and with that I looked back at my other videos, and I saw that you can see kind of the angle that this is at. Not quite at a 45. That with the piston all the way up, that is the orientation it should be at. Now, the end of this shaft, if you remember, is splined a little bit like a gear, and it only goes certain orientations through this connecting rod. So you either are on it or you'll be far off. So I got that one in. And then put the bolt in, and that holds up that connecting rod. Now this side, if you remember, we need to get this spring here in the right orientation, because that determines where the end piece sits. So if you remember, this piece goes on, and then we have to rotate that a little bit. So with the piston all the way forward, if you saw my video, it actually should go on something like that, and then we twist it with a pipe wrench and put it on. Very important. Otherwise you could either have too much tension on this, or maybe not even the right tension, so it wouldn't want to pull itself up. So yeah, we'll get this on the rest of the way. While I had this open, there was some crud built up in here, like rust, dust. I cleaned that out a little bit what I could. You couldn't reach in there very well. And then I slathered these pieces with grease so that they don't rust in there. This one had some pitting on it, so I just slathered them all up to prevent any issue on that. So I'll get that bolted. Now the reason I did not put this in and deal down here like I said I was going to is I want to split the tractor right here, and I want to replace that gasket so it's a new gasket. So your PTO connection goes through, if you remember, inside to kind of down in here. So I don't want to put that in yet. I will probably end up putting the wheels on, separate it, and then end up putting all of that together. Alright, so I thought I'd take a moment and show this crazy setup I got going on here. So I talked about I wanted to replace this gasket here in the center. As you can see, I got the tractor split at the moment. Trying to do this as safely as possible. So what I did, in case you guys go and do this and the tractor is pretty well together like I have it, if you're just taking the frame off and the engine off and all that, and you're just taking everything off piecemeal, it won't really matter. So I undid most of the bolts going around. You have to remove the platform, which, speaking of which, everyone talks about those platform bolts are a pain to get out. They really are. Here's what you're trying to get out. Short little things. You can see you had to weld a bolt to it, and I told the guy to weld a nut. He welded a bolt, but forget it. We had to also heat, as you can see, a little bit of heat here, heat from underneath in order to expand this just a little bit. It didn't take much, just a little bit of heat, and hammering on a breaker bar, it broke free, both of them. So that was good news. So with that, you can get to these 3 bolts up here. Then to split the tractor, like I said, I took most of them out. I left a few in there that were loose. And then this is like the only area that you have room to put a long bolt in. So I have a long bolt in on this side and the other side. So that's kind of keeping things together and lined up. I've got the back supported. If for some reason something were to break and things were to go crazy, it's going to want to fall backwards because you got all this weight on the back. So kind of my backup plan there is that would rest on that. And then my oh crap moment, I've got a sling around the crankshaft on both ends going up to our skid loader. Oh yeah, one more thing. So that's kind of my oh crap. I don't have tension on that. I've got a jack underneath that I can manipulate the elevation of this main body a little bit. So with all that going on, I was able to roll this back and free that up just like you see. So I plan to just run a wire brush on it, put a new gasket on it. Now, of course, I got those 2 bolts in, so I'm kind of going to work around them, and then I might wait till it's close together, and then I go to put the other bolts in, the real bolts, that I will take those bolts out, get the gasket sitting exactly right on the bottom at least, and put those bolts in. So this actually went pretty well. It wasn't wanting to come apart. Turns out I didn't have the jack quite right. I actually had it a little too low, so it was wanting to cave in. I knew that because the top was wanting to close in even though the bottom wasn't. Once I jacked this up a little bit and everything was kind of at the same plane, it just rolled right away from itself. So we'll get this new gasket in place. This is one of those things I put a lot of time into thinking how in the world I was going to do this, because obviously I want to do it safely. So yeah, and then from there we'll go and put the PTO shaft in the back. Alright, so I got this back together, and there's something I should note. I had kind of a dumb moment. So when I had that apart, I was able to fish the gasket around the bowl gears and the differential very gently and get it around to the other side, because you know your bowl gears stick out from this. Well, the only reason I was able to do that is because yours truly forgot to put that intermediate PTO shaft in. I went from kind of the center to there, and goes to there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do that. Naturally, I could have done that and then put that shaft in. But I realized I didn't have that shaft after I had this back together. So I had to take this rear housing back off, slide it off about 2 inches. I never really took it off these long studs, and got that shaft lined up and in there. So I didn't screw up the gasket here. Hopefully it seals. We'll just have to see. It is what it is. So yeah, warning on that, you know, as per usual. Don't forget to put parts back in. So we'll go ahead and get this last piece here on the back. I guess one more note before I put this on. So this is the seal that is inside here. This is still the original. I think I'm just going to try it before I replace it. I believe that if you're having issues with your power troll oil going into your transmission oil, this is the seal that you want to replace. This is a wide, thick one. Sorry, the zoom's being funny. But if you go to replace it, for some reason nowadays they are smaller, they're shorter, and even the parts manual, oddly enough, calls out 2 of these, 2 replacements. And then on the far side, closest side to you, is this washer that goes on it. Alright, so got this back together. As a reminder, I talked about this in my B video. There is no gasket here or here. I put some aviation sealer back here. I meant to do it here, but forgot. Might be okay. We'll see. All of this is so easy to take apart that, you know, if you have a leak, it's not the end of the world. You got to drain the transmission, but can deal with the leak later if we really need to. Don't forget to put the spring back there, that large spring. I was showing you the seal and then the washer, and then it's the spring and then these pieces. Slide them on their studs, tighten them down. I created a gasket for this, slid the PTO in. Don't forget the key that is on the shaft. If you remember my, I think, disassembly video, I accidentally dropped it in the bucket when I pulled it out. There's a key that gets keyed into this gear here. So the way it worked was I put it in and I had to twist it in order to engage that intermediate shaft in here. And then once I had that engaged, then I could twist it and get that key lined up. And then I had to hammer from the end of the shaft in because this bearing here is a tight fit in there so that the bearing doesn't just spin. So when you hammer from the end of the shaft, it's just kind of pressing that bearing in a little bit. It's not too big of a press fit. And then lastly, this thing just has 3 bolts, 1 here, 2 down below. I wouldn't be surprised if I just end up taking this thing off. We'll see. I mean, I've got that shield that'll hold this up. So what I'm going to do now is to kind of test how well this is holding oil. I'm going to put oil in the power troll and then just let it sit for a few days without oil or anything in the transmission. I want to make sure none is getting into the transmission, none is coming out. Yes, it's more likely that it would leak, when this is running and spinning, but it's just kind of an initial test. Something to note, you can see I don't have this bolt in here. So I'm not really sure what's going on here. If I ever have it apart again, I'll take a better look at it. So you can kind of see that there was some sort of oil leak here before. When I took this off, I took the whole rear housing off and I put the bolts back in. Well, when I wanted to put this thing back on and I took these bolts out, this was just had oil running out of it. And so the other day after my screw up and I took this back off, I saw that there was even, before I even got this back on, oil had run out and along the gasket surface. So I put this back on and I left this open, and shoot, I bet a cup of oil came out, and I don't know where it's coming from. But now go figure, I got everything tightened up. I redid that gasket with sealer, and I cannot get this bolt in. It just does not, if you can tell, it's just not lined up quite right. So I find it hard to believe that I can have all the other bolts in and I can't get that one, but by golly, I may have to loosen everything and shift it just a little bit, just with the clearances and all the bolts to get that one in. And it obviously had oil from somewhere. So I don't know, one of life's mysteries. So if you guys have one apart, leave this bolt out, see if there's any oil behind it, let it run out, and I'm curious to know where that oil is coming from. I don't know if it's somehow, I don't think there was even any oil in here, so it can't feed down into there. And I looked back at my old videos, it's not like this hole is open in here that I could tell. So I don't know. I am at a loss as to where that came from. So I'm going to end this video here. You all have a good day. Hope you learned something. Don't forget to put parts in like the intermediate shaft like I did. You get angry at yourself. And we'll see where she goes from here. I'm pretty happy with how things are otherwise coming back together. Baby's coming soon, so I'm probably going to slow down on this. Plus, good weather's coming. It'll be hay season before we know it. I'd like to get this running before then, but I have higher priority stuff. So we'll see where we get with it. All right, have a good one, guys.